Good morning and welcome back to the Duval 22 podcast. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm joined by reporter, publisher, photographer, also John Shipley. As we found out, you can look at his pretty background if you're watching on YouTube. But thank you for everyone for joining in and listening to our bi-week edition podcast. Thank you to John for joining. We're going to be going over a couple of different various topics, just kind of zoning or not zoning out, but kind of what's the word? Not if you're not zoning out, you're just taking a step backward and kind of getting a full view of the picture of the Jaguars' 2025 season. But John, first, I have to congratulate you. Since the last time that you were on this podcast, you have become a champion. How does it feel, my friend? And tell me about the experience.
Dude, it was awesome. It was a good game. We won 20-12, but it was like 13, like they had the ball when it was like we're winning 13-12 with like 90 seconds left. And yeah, it was like the conference made a big deal of it, like it got streamed like on YouTube with an announcer and everything. Anybody can go watch it, but one of our players like makes a sick play to win the game. They throw like a pass downfield and like their kid has it like right here. And it was like half interception, half like a forced fumble. Like our kid just like takes it from him and
Nice.
runs. And a couple plays later we score on like an inside zone, like a 50-yard touchdown to put the game away. And after the game, my dad like went up to the kid that scored. He's like, if you would have just like slid like at any point, we could have just needed it out. Like it'd be over. And the kid was like, "Yeah, I had zero intentions of not scoring like
There you
that touchdown."
go.
So it was good,
Sounds like
man.
a
It was
well-coached
good.
team.
Yeah, yeah. It was good though. It was a fun season. I missed the guys already, honestly, but also nice to have a little bit of time back.
Yeah, that makes sense. We are, of course, speaking about the Orange Park 12U champions. If you weren't aware of John's side gig as a coach, what would you say? I've got two quick follow-up questions before we talk Jaguars. What would you say was your play call of the season? And then also, was that the first championship that like you and or your dad have won with that team?
Oh yeah, that easily first one I've won, I'm sure. So like at like Orange Park, my grandpa started coaching out there in the 70s. He won a crap load of like titles, like one of the fields
Coaching
is
family, damn, there's a lot of legacy here.
like one of their fields like has his name on it. And my dad coached with him in like the 80s and stuff. And then he started coaching again when I was in like middle school or high school. To my knowledge, is the first team that he's been the head coach of that went all the way and won it. As for play call of the year, we beat Callahan 13-12 in the semifinals, and it was at home. And we were down 12-0, 4 minutes left, and we scored a touchdown. It was like it was really similar to a play the Jaguars kind of did the next day, which was funny. My brother texted me and was like, "They did your bit," and it was like we scored on like it was like a trips formation, and we put our just fastest shit kid out at wide receiver and throw a screen to him, and he scores in like a 60-yard touchdown. He had like scored on that play before earlier in the game, but he got called back for a penalty, and it was like every time we did that play, and it was a play like we've had in our playbook for years, but we hadn't used it all season because we were like, let's save it, and we hadn't put it on film at all season. We used it for this game, and he's scoring pretty much every time we do it. And then they have a rule where if you scored and if it's in the fourth quarter, you can do an onside kick, which their onside kick is there's no kicking, but you get the ball and it's like 4th and 10 from like your own 40. And if you get the first down on that 4th and 10 play, you get to keep the ball. Like your offense stays out there. And it's like a super like niche rule. And I know for a fact not every team even like knows that it's a thing. So if we did it to this team when we played them earlier in the season, so they probably knew were aware of it. But if it was any other team, they're probably like, all right, what the hell are they doing? Because so
Yeah.
we score, do the onside kick play, and then the onside kick play. It looks exactly like the screen to our fast kid. Everybody lines up and does the same thing, except the top guy, the middle guy in the trips formation, he fakes blocking and then he just does a fly.
Mm.
And our quarterback looks at the screen and then it's like a screen and go. And then he hits the he hits the go, and literally their entire defense swarmed to our fast kid on the screen, and our other receiver was just wide buck ass naked open, and
So
he
that was like the Brian Thomas touchdown against the,
yeah against the Seahawks,
yeah, against the
and then he
Seahawks.
scored, so it went from 12-0 at 4 minutes left to 13-12 within the span of two plays, and they it was over there.
That's awesome. Well, that's an awesome story, awesome play, awesome season. Hats off to you and your dad and the whole
Appreciate it,
team.
boss.
That's pretty cool. But that is a good segue into the Jaguars since it was a similar play, I guess. The main thing I wanted to talk to you today about, John, was just Travis Hunter's usage. It seems like it's like the worst kept secret in Jacksonville, basically, that he's going to be potentially emerge as the wide receiver one for the Jaguars after this week 8 bye. And you can it like I feel like Liam Cohen hasn't necessarily given away a ton at the podium, honestly, but we can kind of just go off of the week 7 usage alone, where Hunter played a season high 87% of offensive snaps, and he had team highs across the board with 14 targets, 8 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Meanwhile, he didn't play a defensive snap until the second half, and he only had played 20% of defensive snaps. And so, like, if we're going off of that, it seems like Travis Hunter is going to be a near full-time wide receiver and then a part-time cornerback who maybe only comes in when the team is down like 21-0 and really needs his help. I kind of feel like uh, the best long-term path for Hunter would be full-time cornerback, and then part-time receiver, which is partly because like I feel like you need to be more involved in like in the flow of the game more so as a defensive player than an offensive player. Um, but then also the Jaguars, or like also Hunter was just like already a better cornerback prospect coming out of college. So I feel like it'd be easier for him to kind of like just completely master, or not completely master, but get at a good enough spot at that position as soon as he can before focusing on being really full time on both sides. But that was a lot of spewing from me, John. Just like what are your expectations for Hunter in terms of like his snap counts on each side of the ball and the potential effects that he could make?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like, out there to say he's a more talented corner than he is a wide receiver. Like
Totally.
even I was talking, and that's not like to take away from his talents as a wide receiver because obviously he's really good at making guys miss. He leads their receiver room by far in missed tackles force. I think he has 10, and like Brian Thomas Jr., for example, has one. So like there's one very different area where he's, better than BTJ perhaps in that area. But there are other areas where I think outside of that and outside of his ball skills, his skill set just translates more into special traits on the defensive side of the ball. His ability to kind of click and close and his body movements. It's just a whole thing. And I think this was their whole thing when they drafted him is like he can make plays at corner and really help you, but the bigger impact is probably at wide receiver, just
Hmm.
because of how he can impact the game. At corner, he can go all game and be targeted once or twice, and at receiver, they can purposely scheme stuff up to get him involved. I honestly disagree with the notion that he's like set to become like their receiver one over the second half of the season. I think it's a lot of overreaction from 2 quarters against the Rams and angst with Brian Thomas Jr. I think everybody is just so wound up when it comes to BTJ and the season that he's had, and that not even like externally. I think probably internally they're probably pretty wound up about it. It seemed like that second half onslaught of targets to Travis was like a frustration of like, all right, here, damn, like like this game's over. We're not gonna win. We might as well get him Travis some work. So if it was like a full game where he was just consistently from the start of the game to the end of it getting fed the ball, I'd probably feel differently. But until we see a game like that, I'm not going to project him to like leap to the front of the receiver line because it's kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to Travis. His greatest asset, the fact that he is the only player in the NFL who is doing what he's doing, like having a 100-yard day the same day that you have an awesome pass breakup against Devontae Adams, like no other player's doing that. Like
Yeah.
I tweeted out that stat and somebody like tweeted at me like honestly though, you would take Emeka Egbuka over Travis Hunter. Like as a receiver, like yeah, but as a player, I'd probably still lean Travis because I'm not seeing Emeka Egbuka go out there and give JSN and Devontae Adams like real competition on reps. But on the other hand, he is so good at both sides that it almost feels like you can't let him specialize because then you're hurting the team in some way, which they're still kind of doing because they're letting him play more offense and defense over the last, couple of weeks. But yeah, no matter how good he is on offense, like they let him play what 14 snaps against the Rams. Well, in those 14 snaps, he still made it abundantly clear that he's your best corner. So yeah, it's either utilize him or just not play him on defense at all. Because when you play him at defense, it's going to make people say, "Hey, why isn't this guy, on the field a lot more than he is?"
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to be playing like on both sides of the ball. It's just a matter of like which side it's more on. And maybe it's kind of similar to the first half of the season where it just kind of like fluctuates based on the game and based on the opponent and based on the injuries and based on just like outside circumstances that aren't directly involved with Travis Hunter. But yeah, like the both sides of the ball could certainly need use him. Like it's not like the Jaguars have like three awesome wide receivers. So like it makes a lot of sense for him to just play cornerback. The Jaguars, after last week's game, had the ninth fewest explosive plays on offense, and they allowed the fifth most explosive plays. And he's like just a walking playmaker. And so, and then obviously, like more than anything else, there's just the fact that he wants to do it, and the Jaguars are kind of like letting him prove people wrong by playing both sides of the ball. So yeah, I certainly expect the usage to remain on both sides. Like he's still going to be playing both sides. But it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, specifically in terms of what he's playing more of. I'm also interested, like, say he does become like a focal point of the offense and they really want him to get involved on that side of the ball. He's only learned one position on the offense so far, which is a slot position. So I'd be curious to see after the bye, like if he's kind of like used around the formation more often and used also as a Z formation, some as a Z receiver sometimes, or if he's still going to be kind of like pigeonholed in that single role as he continues to kind of learn the playbook on both sides of the ball. So to move on, John, just like in terms of other just uh, general questions about the team as they leave their bye week, like Travis Hunter's usage is definitely a big one. Just can they clean up penalties and just like have a normal operation? I feel like is another big one. What's another question that you've got about the Jaguars exiting their bye week?
I mean, I think the offensive line certainly it's, which offensive line is really the one that they have? Is it the one that I think what gave up 3 sacks through the first 4 games, or is it the one that's given up 17 sacks in the last 2 games? I shouldn't say. I'll take it back. The offensive line hasn't allowed 17 sacks in the last 2 games. The offense has allowed 17 sacks because Trevor Lawrence has to like when I think of like I didn't think Trevor Lawrence was very good against the Rams. And when I thought of his negative plays, I thought of him running into Braden Fisk like a blind sea bass more than I thought of, any couple of throws or anything. So I felt like the Seahawks game, the O-line, got like you can put most of those sacks on them. Like the first sack of that game, I think like you probably put that one on Trevor Lawrence. So either the first or second one where he just made
First
like a
one, yeah.
stupid scramble. Yeah. And then the rest, it felt like the rest were generally on the offensive line. And then against the Rams, I felt like a good chunk of them were like on Trevor Lawrence. And I just, which offensive line, is the real one in Jacksonville. And I do think there's something too that the two best fronts that they've played, they've had the most issues with. Carolina Panthers don't have an NFL pass rusher on their roster. The Bengals just have Trey Hendrickson, and Trey Hendrickson got 2 sacks against the Jaguars, but otherwise nobody else did anything. The 49ers, they played a 49ers team without Nick Bosa, and their pass rush isn't as bad as it is now, but it was pretty freaking bad in week 4. And then they play suddenly two really good fronts in Seattle and the Rams, and it looks like, their offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL again. So it's just, can they stabilize it? The answer is probably that the offensive line is somewhere in the middle. It's, I think even with how its production over the first month, I think everybody knew that this didn't suddenly become like a top 10 offensive line, especially in terms of talent. And I'd say the answer is more so, it's not that top offensive line. It's probably also not one of the worst in the NFL. It's probably somewhere in the 20s.
Yeah, and that's honestly like not that bad considering like
It's
where
what we
the unit
expected,
was
right?
at. Like and like with the preseason expectations, like I feel like it could have easily been a bottom five, bottom three unit. So like still hovering in the 20s, like maybe early 20s is like not the worst thing in the world. Like that is good enough in a lot of different ways, especially if Trevor Lawrence can kind of like figure stuff out. I definitely do agree. The Rams game wasn't his best, and especially like the first quarter, like they couldn't get anything going, and it was mostly on him. And he just like it feels like he doesn't really have a lot of trust in his offensive line, I think. And whether that's like understandable or not, he's seeing ghosts a little bit, honestly. Like I've said this before, but for Lawrence, like one of his best traits immediately coming out of college in the NFL was pocket presence and avoiding sacks, and just having like a innate feel while he was back there at avoiding pressure, and that's just like kind of slowly gone away over the years. And so,
Yeah. Like,
like hopefully like the offensive line like Trevor definitely needs to improve himself too, but hopefully the offensive line can play well enough to kind of like give a boost of confidence back to Lawrence.
no, like I agree. I agree 100%. I think like that part of his game has kind of honestly tanked the last couple of years. I mean, you just go look back at his numbers early in his career and his two lowest, seasons in terms of sack rate happened in his first two seasons. I mean, his second season, he was only sacked 27 times. And, th this year it's at right now it's at a career high by a good amount at 7.17%. So I'm with you. Like it felt like last year, it felt like was one of the first years where he was really kind of getting beat up and in terms of like sacks and a high sack rate. And it felt like then we were saying, okay, he's not really handling pressure as well as he has before. And then it's kind of carried over into this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that I've got for the Jaguars, like for this week specifically too, but really just like after their bye week is just like what we're going to see from the rookies, including but not limited to Travis Hunter. Like Bashal Tootin, I feel like is like it's just kind of like a matter of time until he goes off. I feel like, and maybe that like won't happen until next season. But I just even though Travis Hunt ETN is having a great season, and I'm definitely like rooting for him. I just feel like it's pretty unlikely that he's gonna like just stay afloat kind of or stay upright for all 17 games. And so I feel like we'll see Tootin emerge at some point. Maybe that also equates to a larger role for LaQuint Allen. But Wyatt Millum, another offensive guy, an offensive lineman, do you think that maybe we see him at any point, barring in or like outside of because of injuries?
Yeah, like they're in kind of a weird position, right? Where short term, you have a chance to compete now and like a window now. Like no, like I don't think anybody thinks they have like a Super Bowl window this year, but you have a window to make the playoffs, and then from there, crazier things can happen. So you have to think short term, winning now, and obviously right now they feel like, especially with Milam's knee injury, that's kind of kept him on the shelf for as long as it did. He's just now gotten back from it. That Ezra Cleveland is the better option. But then there's also the aspect of, the Jaguars are clearly in this thing for the long haul. And the smart long-term approach is to see what you have at Wyatt Milam. So you're not guessing entering year two and see what you have from Bashal Tootin and LaQuint Allen in expanded roles. But it feels like they're just kind of towing that line and probably deferring a bit to the veterans right now. Like ETN, to his credit, hasn't done anything to deserve losing carries to Bashal Tootin. And it feels like until he does that, and until Bashal Tootin kind of wins those carries over him, their approach kind of stay the same. And like Tootin's going to make plays when the offense is running the ball and utilizing running backs enough for there to be something for two running backs. But when like there's barely anything for Travis Etienne to make an impact the last couple of weeks because of game script or even the game plan, then it's tough to get two running backs involved, let alone one. So I think that's a big thing. They got to get back to being a balanced running team. Almost 100 pass attempts in the last 2 weeks. That's not who like no, like even the most optimistic of Trevor Lawrence fans, which I think you and I have always been pretty high on his game, and both of us probably would say he's not playing great right now, would say that he's not the guy you want throwing 90 plus times over a 2 game span. Like he's not somebody who's going to be super efficient with like volume. You give him put more on his plate and you're probably going to get a little more negative results. So, no, it's definitely something that I think like they need to find some answers on. I just don't know if they'll make any short-term sacrifices to do so. And man, that right now, like when you're looking at the rookie class, like there's definitely some positives. Travis Hunter obviously has a ton of potential, has made some big plays. You got to be excited about the Quint Allen and Bayshaw Tune and then Ray Lane on special teams. But man, they not getting anything from their two third round picks at this point in the season, and it's due to injuries. It's not like they haven't got anything because they suck and like they just
Yeah.
can't see the field. Like it's strictly because of injuries. But they only had three top 100 picks, and two of them, one's not going to sniff the field at all due to his foot injury, Caleb Bransaw. The other was hurt for a long time, and at this point, who knows if he plays much as a rookie. They could really use contributions from, those two guys or two rookies in some aspect. I mean, dude, they really, I think the last 2 weeks have shown that the Caleb Bransaw injury was a significant one, for this defense. I don't know if Caleb Bransaw would have been starting week one. I know a lot of people assume that. I probably actually disagree with that. I think Andrew Wingard was going to start week one regardless, but I bet Ransaw would have been starting by now.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's clear that they're just like his range and his athleticism is just something they don't really have at safety right now.
I feel like another thing the Jaguars don't really have is a good pass rush, especially since Trayvon Walker had the wrist injury. Like it just feels like it hasn't really been the same since the beginning of the season. That's another thing that like maybe you can somewhat chalk up to like strength of opponent, and it got kind of like harder as the season progressed. But according to Sports Info Solutions, on four-man pass rushes in true dropback situations, so removing play action and screens, the Jaguars ranked 25th in pressure rate and 31st in sack rate this season. So it's kind of the same old story. And so I guess like the question, like I'm just identifying the weakness for the Jaguars, especially as it relates to like how far they'll be able to make it in the playoffs. Like having a four-man pass rush goes a long, long, long way. That's probably like the next most important thing after having like a capable quarterback that can make a postseason run. And so I like it's a weakness. And so my question is like how can it get solved? Like we've already seen a lot from Anthony Campanile in terms of doing like mugged up like looks at the line of scrimmage, doing simulated pressures, pulling a lot of tools out of his schematic bag. But then like can Trayvon Walker kind of turn it around? Can Josh Hines Allen get more than a half sack, which is his current season total so far?
They'll
Can we
feed
see a
into
jump
it.
from Mason Smith or like a even younger guy like BJ Green? Will the Jaguars make a move at the trade deadline for a defensive lineman? So I'm interested to see like just what they're able to do to figure out that issue because right now it's definitely an issue.
Don't feed into it.
No?
I'll say, man, the Hines Allen hand wringing is the least handsome issue that Jaguars
Yeah,
fans
no, I
have.
agree with that. I was just throwing that all into the
No,
argument.
I understand. I understand. I mean, you look at the numbers, dude. So this is before this past slate of games happened. So this was their rankings entering week 8. Number 32 in sacks, number 32 in sack rate, number 27 in pressure rate. When blitzing, their pressure rate's 43.2%. When not blitzing, it is 24.5%. The only way they've been able to get after quarterbacks really is by blitz. I mean, Devin Lloyd is statistically been their like third best pressure guy, which is
Yeah.
and it's not like Devin Lloyd's lining up on the edge and like winning like matchups. They're just blitzing the hell out of him and the blitzes work. And I really think that Anthony Campanelli, how he would prefer to play defense is to like and the whole issue with the defense the last few weeks has been they've been so brutally bad on first and second down, giving up chunk plays, a lot of second and shorts, third and shorts that it seems like Anthony Campanella likes and is at best at calling plays and using these exotic kind of pressures when it's like third and long in an obvious passing situation. It's not really working as much on third and two or second and two when teams are going like a lot of max protection and stuff because they know they have more downs to play with. They don't need so many guys out in the route because they have another down, to utilize. I really think he'd rather rush for and have seven guys in coverage more often than not he just like it seems like he literally has to blitz right now to generate a pass rush. I think Hines Allen's had a really good season. Like I completely acknowledge his numbers are stupid. He's like top 12 in pressure rate, win rate, quarterback hits, every important stat,
Yeah.
and then is like 200 something in sacks. Like I acknowledge it's very stupid. But like he's still at least like winning his one-on-ones. And that's what I feel like the defensive line has been missing is they haven't had anybody winning one-on-ones outside of Josh Hines Allen. I mean, you look at the Denver Broncos. How many guys do they have who are consistently winning one-on-ones? It's what, probably three or four. Same
Mhm.
with the Rams. Same with, pretty much every good defense this year that you can think of. The Seattle Seahawks, etc., the Houston Texans. Like they have multiple guys up front winning, and it's just been Josh Hines Allen because Trayvon Walker basically hasn't played a full game. Well, not basically. He hasn't played a full game since week 3, and since then, he's been at best a role player. He only played a little bit against the 49ers, didn't play against the Chiefs, only played a little bit against the Seahawks and Rams. I think he has 12 combined early down snaps over the last 2 games, which could explain why they are awful on those early downs. So I do think that's the defense's biggest issue, and like James Gladstone and the Jaguars definitely tried to address that issue in the offseason via these kind of value free agency signings. Bring in an Ogba and Smoot, even Dennis Gardeck to an extent, moving Eric Armstead inside. It just seems like none of them have really panned out in that respect, and that it's something that I don't think you can even fix in season unless you make some kind of bold move for a guy who can be a tangible pass rusher. I think it's something that you probably can't fix until the offseason when you have to go out there and, get somebody.
Yeah, I agree. It's like got to be fixed with a new addition, whether it is at the trade deadline or if we got to wait around until next offseason. I feel like Josh Hines Allen is like that those bar charts that you see on social media of like talent and then production is like the way smaller one next to it. And so yeah, he's definitely a lot better than his zero point 0.5 sacks this season would reflect. I do think you bring up a really good point with the early down success. Like that's part of the reason that the Jaguars' defense hasn't been able to apply as much pressure in the past 2 or 3 weeks is that they just haven't been able to be as successful as they need to be on early downs. And it's the same thing on the offensive side of the ball. The Jaguars this season rank 30th in terms of average yards to go on third down, and I would bet that they rank dead last in terms of just the past 2 weeks. And like our guy Daniel Griffiths tweeted out this morning actually that the Jaguars rank last in completion percentage on both screens and play action passes this season. And so like they got to get better at the easy buttons, whether it's like Trevor Lawrence actually finding a rhythm, like guys not dropping passes. Like I don't know, but they got to do a little bit better in terms of just like early down success because then that'll bring the explosives on late downs.
Yeah, it seems like they're really good at running back screens and even tight end screens, but the
Hmm.
receiver screens have just been off. And
Yeah, I
it's
don't get
wild
that.
because like Tampa was great at receiver screens.
Right.
And maybe we should stop saying, just because Tampa is good at something that the Jaguars, should have some success at it. Maybe that's a lesson to be learned. But I've been flabbergasted at how useless screens have been. I mean, the Seahawks game, like their defensive ends were like making the tackle on every screen. I don't have the answer for why it's been so bad. That's kind of been my new mantra. Every time people like ask me, "All right, what's the solution? Why is this?" I don't know, dude. That's their job, man. They got to
Right.
figure it out. I'm just telling you that as a dad. Like I got asked by somebody, like I wrote an article saying how, just by the numbers, Trevor and the passing offense have been a disappointment. Like there's like no quality metric out there that he's better than like 19th in. And most of them he's like 24th or 25th in.
Yeah.
And somebody was like, "Well, do you think you ever will become consistent?" Like, what are you asking me for? I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
John Shipley, reporter, publisher, photographer, and Magic 8 Ball. I mean, that's it. John,
That's right.
any other questions about the Jaguars as we wrap up uh, after exiting their Week 8 bye, or just if you want to plug anything that you're working on, let the people where they can find you. Let's wrap this
Uh,
up.
give me your take on the BTJ stuff from over the weekend.
Right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Liam Cohen,
Our
like. Liam
Peaceful
Cohen
bye
gets
week was
asked.
interrupted.
Yeah, Liam Cohen gets asked about Brian Thomas, and like he doesn't get asked about the report. Like Diana Russini of The Athletic reports on Saturday morning that the Jaguars are listening to calls for Brian Thomas Jr., though a trade seems highly unlikely, which on the surface is already a weird report, to begin with. And then Liam
Yep.
Cohen, he doesn't get asked about the trade. He just gets asked like, "Hey, do you think Brian Thomas can turn around a season?" Basically, and he like unpromptedly goes. Like, yeah, I saw that report. No, we're not moving Brian Thomas. So what was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I kind of feel like he was just prepared to be asked about it, and so he kind of like had that response in his head. And so like the first time someone said Brian Thomas, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I saw the report. We're not going to do anything." So I think he was just kind of like in defense mode. But you could also say that he was kind of like looking out for the player maybe, and like just by like shutting that r rumor down immediately, so that the player didn't have anything to worry about. I don't know. Like I didn't really think much of his response, honestly. I didn't think much of the report. Like you said, it was kind of a nothing burger. I mean, and as you said, like at the beginning of this podcast, like obviously the Jaguars are like frustrated with how Brian Thomas has performed this season, as are many in Duval County.
Yeah, Brian
But
Thomas
yeah,
is frustrated.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I'm not really buying anything. Like now I'm seeing and hearing people like talk about like, oh, like thinking of like Brian Thomas to the Patriots or like the Steelers are like making up like trade destinations, but like we're definitely not at that point. I just didn't even want to spend
Did,
this much time talking about
did,
it.
did you see the one they like made a graphic for it? They were like the Bills first rounder and Keon Coleman for Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
And the
Dude.
thing was like so many like fantasy people like took that and ran with why are the Jaguars shopping Brian Thomas? And my whole thing was like even without like when I saw this, even without me putting the feelers out yet to see how true it was, my initial thought was, well, that means nothing. Like it's the trade deadline. Literally everybody, like that's what these GMs do. They make calls like to see about availability. Some outrageous players get inquired about. I guarantee you, Aaron Donald, the Rams used to get calls about him. The Titans, we know for a fact, we're getting calls about Jeffrey Simmons. Max Crosby, every year teams are calling them. I guarantee you teams are probably asking Cleveland about Myles Garrett, etc., and so forth. So, like outside and a long time football guy who's been involved with these processes said this to me years ago when we were talking about the trade deadline. You know, 2022, the Kansas City Chiefs were hounding the Jaguars about Josh Hines Allen. They needed a pass rush bad. They called the Jaguars constantly. The answer was always going to be no, unless the Chiefs obviously made like a sweet deal. Like, okay, they offered like several first, and I'd imagine the Jaguars, would have done it. But the answer was always no. But the Jaguars weren't like seeing their number come up and hanging up because it's their job to listen, like to get information. So Josh Hines Allen was never going to get traded, but that didn't matter to Kansas City, and that didn't matter to Jacksonville. So, I firmly believe that there are only a handful of players in the NFL who are off limits, and it's like a couple quarterbacks: Patrick Mahomes, not Josh Hines, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I don't think Joe Burrow should be like an untouchable, but I'd imagine Cincinnati probably has him like up there, and then like Myles Garrett, uh, Micah
Micah,
Parsons with an owner who's not senile,
right.
etc. And I don't think the Jaguars have any player who's untouchable. Maybe the only player the Jaguars would just hang up on you on is Travis Hunter. And
You're
that's
right.
purely because they spent so much to get him that
Mhm.
they kind of have to see this through. Otherwise, like I had somebody tell me it's disrespectful to not list Trevor Lawrence among those. No, I think the Jaguars would take a phone call. And that's not me saying I think the Jaguars are shopping him, but I think knowing them, knowing how the NFL works, knowing how general managers work, and knowing how James Gladstone works, if somebody called them and was like inquiring, they would at least take the phone call and have the conversation because that's what these guys do. So that was my first thought was, okay, if you're telling me a team's getting calls about a player at the trade deadline, that means absolutely nothing to me because obviously that's literally what the entire trade deadline is. The Jaguars have Greg Newsome now because James Gladstone was just calling around looking for somebody to take Tyson Campbell. So it was very much a nothing thing to me. And then, when I ask about it to people in the know, people within the organization, it's very clear no, we're not shopping Brian Thomas Jr. thing like that. no, that's so I can't confirm or deny that teams have called about him. I would assume they have because teams call about everybody, but the sense that the Jaguars are actively shopping Brian Thomas Jr., I can confidently say it isn't happening. And I mean, like I agree with you. Liam didn't say anything explosive, but also probably can't trade him now that you said you weren't going to.
Yeah.
So,
If it
and
does kind
like
of
to
tie your
Liam's
hands.
credit, he's been truthful and transparent when it comes to like when people were asking in the summer about Travis Etienne, and he was like, "No, I've seen that report. We're not trading him." The smoke at the time was that Tank Bixby was the one who was getting shopped. He was right. So it feels like if they want to move a guy, he'll just he won't say anything about, oh yeah, we're not going to trade him. And if he's going to say we're not going to trade him, I believe him until he gives us a reason not to. So I thought it was stupid. I thought a lot of reactions to it were stupid. I thought reading literacy really took a hell of a hit that day. Um, here we
You're not
are. Here we
wrong.
are,
I mean,
man.
it takes a hit every day, John.
So
It
I
takes a
got I
hit
got
every
I
day.
got worked up a little bit there.
No, I'm glad that was good. Unfortunately, we got to go in like the next 30 seconds before this Zoom meeting ends. But that was a good synopsis. I mean, I don't really have anything to add. We've by the time people are listening to this podcast, there will be less than a week until the November 4th trade deadline, and so not
I
too much
I
more
forgot
time
my
to lose
bit.
brain cells.
I forgot my bit.
What's his?
Remember when Doug Marrone got fired by a report
Yeah,
in
yeah,
2019?
yeah. I
He
forgot
ends up
about that
coaching
too.
the team for like another 13 months.
Yeah, it's not the most accurate reporter either. So there's that. But John is an accurate reporter. John's a great guy, great person to follow for Jags knowledge. So go check him out. SI Jaguars underscore John underscore Shipley, whatever it is. Now you're good stuff, John. You're a champ. All right. Don't let
I
anyone tell you
appreciate
differently.
I appreciate it, man, and I hope, judging by your background, that you break out of that mental institution soon.
I gotta do some work, man. I gotta do some home improvement. All right, until next
You,
time.
you
Thank you,
you look
John.
like the walls on the other side of you are rubber.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on it. Next time you're back, it'll be better.
Good.
Thanks, everyone. Till next time.